I remember playing a demo for Angerfoot several Steam Next Fest ago now, and I've been stoked for the game ever since. It was my most anticipated game when Devolver Digital showed it off at their 2020 Devolver Summer Showcase right next to the Pluggy Squire. Devolver, man. Even if you're not in their target audience, you gotta admit they always bring the good stuff. And I think it's very clear which audience they were going for here. Hotline Miami fans, duh, what were you thinking? This game is basically just Hotline Miami but in first person and a shot of adrenaline right to the heart. It's a very fast-paced, puzzly shooter where you die a lot. Initially, I wondered if Hotline Miami would work in first person, and the answer is undoubtedly, emphatically, yes. Hotline Miami was top-down, which gives you much-needed spatial awareness to get through the very fast, trigger-happy enemies that can kill you as easily as breathing. Angerfoot may be first person, but it still works because rooms are relatively small, and despite how fast the game is, I always felt I had enough time to get the lay of the land whenever I busted through a door with both lethal force and intent. So even if I died the next time around, I knew what was coming. I never had to worry about enemies coming from completely different rooms seemingly at random either, like in Hotline Miami. You kick the door in, shoot the guy in front of you, get your head blown off by the guy to the left, respawn, kick the door in, shoot the guy in front of you, then the guy to the left before he can get a shot off, then get your head blown off by someone else, and repeat. Doing a little bit better every time. That's Angerfoot's gameplay loop. And as much as we like to think our playthrough of Hotline Miami was us carefully planning out moves and strategizing after carefully watching and memorizing memory patrols, in reality it was just that. Kick in the door, shoot guy in front, get head blown off by guy to the left. It's the same gameplay loop, just a different camera angle, and the camera angle doesn't change the fact that this genre is more about fucking around and finding out than anything and being damn addicting while they're at it. It has that, just one more run, one more attempt quality to it, as you get just a little bit farther than last time, as you memorize and master just a little bit more of the level and do that much better, only to suddenly feel trepidatious as you get to a new part of the level and you don't know what to expect anymore, and don't want to lose the progress you made. But that's what makes it so satisfying when you do succeed. That feeling of finally overcoming something that's been kicking your ass for so long is what makes the game so fun and addicting. And while it can be devastating in the moment when you do die and have to start the level all over again, in reality the levels are pretty short. Most can be completed in a few minutes. The only reason dying initially feels like such a setback is because the game is tough, and you probably died a lot in the early parts of the level, but now you got those parts down to a science. You can get through them in seconds in some cases, and back to where you were in no time. That feeling of progression, not in the character's stats or unlocks, but in you as a player, your skills improving was what kept me coming back time and time again. Well, that and its fast and crunchy combat. Each level starts with a bang of your boot meeting a door, followed by a frantic scramble to get the lay of the land. You only have a brief moment to react as you die in only 1 or 2 hits. Luckily, enemies are equally as fragile, as they often far outnumber you and often come armed to the teeth as well. You can get through the whole game with nothing but your freakishly strong kicks that would put Chun-Li to shame, and it is a fun challenge to take that on, but you do get a pretty large variety of guns as well. The thing is, you don't start with most levels with a gun. You have to pry it from the cold dead hands of your enemies, which can lead to some frantic moments as you kick some dude's face in and scramble for his weapon before his buddy can pull the trigger. Ammo is also very limited, and you can't replenish ammo normally unless you got the right footwear, but even that only gives you 1 shot per melee kill. If you want to keep shooting, you have to constantly drop your gun, preferably by throwing it into a guy's face with lethal intent, which has the added bonus of stunning the guy, and picking up a new one. So you can't just fall back on Old Faithful, you have to work with what you got. But of course, in the hands of a player as skilled as I, the game was pretty easy. Okay, I might be exaggerating a little bit there, but still I feared I would be feeling the anger part of Angerfoot far more than I actually did. That rarely happened though, thanks to some very clever level design that often has you clearing small, manageable rooms where most enemies tend to be in front of you, often with at least one poor sap in killing range of the door you just liberated from its hinges. And that first person perspective, if anything, just made the gameplay feel that much more exhilarating when you would finally master a level, putting you directly into the action and making you feel like an unstoppable badass, zipping through rooms and enemies at breakneck speed. You know, so long as you ignore all the deaths. Okay, we get it, I'm bad at games. And because the game loaded so fast when you did die, it didn't even feel like I was dying that often. I mean, I was, clearly, but I barely had time to process the deaths because before I knew it, I was standing in front of the door, kicking it down, hellbent on not forgetting about that one dude with the shotgun around the corner, and eyeing that explosive barrel just begging to be kicked into a corner. And the times I did start to feel frustrated with the game, it was almost always when I was chasing those optional objectives that are designed to be more difficult and require multiple playthroughs of a level. Those challenges, along with completing levels, give you stars, and those stars allow you to unlock new shoes with a variety of different abilities. You get 1 new pair every 5 stars, meaning you're constantly getting new toys to tinker with and switch things up. But what I love was how the devs clearly threw stuff in there just for fun. Some of them were very useful, like one that replenishes ammo with every melee kill, but another shoe made it so doors exploded when they hit someone, which ranged from extremely useful to extremely detrimental. Or there was another shoe that just made you really short, and another gave you big head mode, and another gave you bullet time when kicking the door in. They're useful and really fun and really silly. The game does not take itself serious at all. And the shoes weren't necessary. You can go through the whole game barefoot like the heathen you are and still do pretty well, but it was always fun to see what I unlocked, try out new shoes and experiment to see how it changed the way I could tackle the level. And each level comes with a set of challenges as well, and these challenges would often either require you to use a certain pair of shoes, or there would be a pair that would make things just a little bit easier. So the game was always giving me that little carrot on the stick to switch things up. And the game is constantly introducing new enemies and weapons as well, almost right up to the very end. You have your basic dudes with pistols that kill you in a couple shots, and guys with clubs that kill you in one, but eventually you're fighting everything from big armored dudes with Gatling guns to swarms of little guys with knives. Each of the 4 gangs you fight have their own theme to them, like the Violence Gang or Pollution Gang, allowing the devs to just get silly with enemy types and environments, like how when you fight the Pollution Gang, you're skulking through sewers that the gang members have made their home and happily pollute it further, and we get enemies like giant tentacles with guns popping out of the toxic sludge, or we get weapons like a plunger that acts like a grappling hook, pulling enemies towards you for a swift kick to the face. Sometimes even earlier enemies get a new gimmick, like the pistol guy who starts popping out of the ceiling tiles to hang upside down and shoot at you for a change in the business gang territory. The first area initially has you rampaging through apartments, eventually escalating to traversing rooftops, jumping from building to building, crashing through windows as you avoid snipers. The next area puts you in the sewers, filled with toxic sludge you can knock enemies into for an easy kill, and they all culminate in some very fun, very creative boss fights that often require you to kick something significantly bigger than you. There is so much creativity here in the enemy and environment designs, and they all feel more like puzzles. Quick reflexes and good aim are important, of course, but learning enemy placements and what order and weapon you want to deal with them in are far more integral to success than just reflexes. And the story is surprisingly deep. It's an interesting dive into the complexities of the criminal underworld and how it functions alongside society and how it affects the people therein. The game also isn't afraid to discuss some touchy subjects, pointing out the similarities between gangs and the quote-unquote legitimate business world, by having one of the 4 main gangs you fight just being a big corporation that rules over one part of the city with a fist as ironclad as any of the gangs. And it's implied that that company has also been passed down through the same family for generations. Or how another gang that specializes in violence was working with an awful lot of cops. It also tackles climate change through the Pollution Gang, using it as a metaphor for the socio-political factors that result in such rampant pollution. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's dumb. It's a dumb story about a sneakerhead who literally lives in Crime City and gets his prized shoes stolen and has to get them back from 4 ludicrously themed gangs in time for movie night with his girlfriend, who is surprisingly supportive of his sneaker-induced murderous rampage. It is silly. It is ridiculous. It is capital D dumb. And I mean that in the best way possible. It is far from a deep story, but it is a good one, in that it knows exactly what it is and runs with it. It's an absurdist comedy with a bit of gross-out humor mixed in. It's also just not much of a story-driven game. You occasionally get a level where there's no combat and you're allowed to just walk around an area and talk to people to get a feel for that specific gang, usually gotten across through various jokes, but you don't have to talk to anyone. You can just run through and get back to the gameplay. Most of the humor is more visual than witty dialogue, like people shooting the water because it's getting cleaner after you killed the Pollution Gang's leader and they need to fight back against the cleanliness. Or enemies popping down from the ceiling tiles and hanging there like bats as they shoot at you, or enemies dancing in celebration after they had killed you. And while I saw those dancing animations plenty of times, the game still got plenty of smiles for me with its humor. And to be fair, if I had just killed a dude who'd wiped out half of the major gangs in a city literally ruled by crime, I'd be dancing my ass off too. The stories we tend to celebrate, the good stories, the good art, quote unquote, tend to be very serious and deal with pretty heavy topics, and I do like that stuff, and plenty of that stuff is very good. But a story doesn't have to do that to be good, in my opinion. I like to judge things based on what they're trying to do and how well they achieve it. Angerfoot knows what it is. It is a ridiculous, over-the-top comedy with a heavy focus on tight, addicting gameplay loop that manages plenty of challenge but rarely gets frustrating. And it walks with confidence in what it is. Angerfoot achieves all it sets out to do. So when Angerfoot comes a knocking, get ready for a good time.